Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart, where we talk about navigating the ups and downs of life with a focus on mental health. I'm MommaFoxFire, and today we are talking about something most of us do without even thinking about it. We listen to music. We put on headphones when we need to focus. We blast certain songs in the car when we're mad. We cry at breakup ballads at 2 a.m. We dance in our kitchens with our kids. Music is just there, part of the background noise of our lives. Music, though, is way more than background noise. It's doing something to us, something real and measurable and sometimes profound. There's actual science behind why certain songs make us feel a certain way, why some music calms us down and other music amps us up, why we can hear a song from high school and suddenly we're 16 again, feeling all those feelings we thought we'd left behind. Our brains process music in multiple areas at once. It hits our memory centers, our emotional centers, our motor centers. It releases dopamine and can actually change our heart rate and breathing patterns. And for people dealing with mental health struggles, music can be more than just entertainment. It can be a tool, a coping mechanism, sometimes the only thing that gets you through a really bad day. I know for me personally, music has been there during some of my darkest moments. When I'm dealing with a migraine, I need silence. But when I'm dealing with anxiety or depression, I need sound. I need something to focus on that isn't the noise in my own head. I know I'm not alone in that. Millions of people use music as a form of self-medication, whether they realize that's what they're doing or not. We don't talk about it that way very often. We don't talk about how powerful music really is or how intentionally we can use it to support our mental health. We just know that it helps and we keep doing it. Today's guest is someone who has spent his entire career at the intersection of music and human emotion. Justin Paul is an international DJ, record producer, and educator who has performed over 1,500 times around the world. He's a founding member of the Philadelphia Experiment Artists Collective and teaches courses at UCLA that bridge the global music industry with higher education. But what really drew me to this conversation is that Justin has studied the actual science of sound frequencies and how they impact our brains and bodies. He has looked at research showing that certain frequencies can slow or even reverse conditions like dementia. He's watched thousands of people on dance floors use music to literally shake off trauma and stress. And he's created his own ambient soundscapes specifically designed for meditation and healing. He's also someone who uses music to manage his own mental health. He's been open about experiencing what he calls mental turbulence and about the ways he's learned to protect his energy in an industry that can be incredibly demanding. In the conversation you're about to hear, we talk about how different genres of music create different emotional states, how sound frequencies can physically impact our bodies, why dancing can be such a powerful form of emotional release, and how artists themselves navigate the mental health challenges that come with a career in music. We also talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough, which is that healing isn't a destination. You don't just fix yourself and move on. It's a lifelong process, and music can be one of the tools that helps you navigate that process. Whether you're someone who already uses music intentionally for your mental health, or you're just curious about the connection between sound and well-being, this conversation is going to give you a lot to think about. So let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Justin Paul about music and mental health. To another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I am really excited for our conversation tonight. We're going to be talking about music and mental health. And I do have a question queue open. If you are here and you would like to ask a question, feel free to pop that into the chat. We'll make sure to address it while we are here live. But today I am joined by Justin Paul, who is an international DJ, record producer, and educator who has performed over 1,500 times around the world. He has shared music at major festivals like Burning Man, Hangout, and as well as intimate events and cultural spaces. Justin is a founding member of the Philadelphia Experiment Artists Collective and teaches courses at UCLA that bridge the global music industry with higher education. Beyond the stage, he is passionate about mentoring the next generation of artists and exploring how music connects people, communities, and our shared emotions. I am really excited to talk today about the powerful relationship between music and mental health. Before we get into that, I want to make sure that I share these. There's several links for you guys: website, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those kinds of things. So if you want to connect with Justin anywhere, feel free to click through on those. And like I always say, connection is important, but also engagement is key. So make sure that if you go connect with him on any of those, that you are just clicking like on something. Just click like, leave a comment, whatever it is. That's what really helps whenever you go to all these social media platforms and everything. So Justin, I'll pause there and say thank you so much for joining us. And I am super excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, like I already said, I am too. So Rose, I see you're here. Hello, welcome. Glad to have you. You know the drill already, how to enter questions and everything. NATO as well. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in. Justin, can you share a little bit about what led you to a career in the music industry, and also like music industry, and you do teaching and everything? And then are there things that you love and hate about it?
Sure. Well, music's been a big part of my life since childhood, really. My grandmother and both mother were huge fans of music. They both had an awesome vinyl record collection. And I used to help my grandmother make mixtapes for our road trips. And my mom was a singer in a band. They did a lot of like Blondie and Heart covers, and that really kind of inspired me. And then later, my cousin, who's like my big brother, Steve Waller, is a DJ. And probably around 14 years old, I started helping him carry sound systems and records and turntables and being his Padawan learner. Um, and he had so many opportunities that ultimately he needed help. And then I was able to kind of join forces with him, and that kind of took me through my high school years. And then when I entered college, at that point, I'd been DJing for many years with him and really loved it and had the bug and wanted to find a way to turn that into some kind of a career. And of course, when I talked to my high school counselor and she was like, "What do you want to do in college?" I says, "Well, I like to match beats on turntables. What do you got?" She laughed and says, "Well, they don't have that, but they have radio, TV, film." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll sign up for that." And I ended up DJing on college radio, and that really kind of ultimately led me into learning about the greater music industry and working with labels and trying to help promote artists on the radio and break new music, and taught me how to even host my own events and be able to promote them. And of course, I did learn a lot about television and filmmaking as well, and kind of learned that. And I saw a lot of similarities between what I was doing with DJing and, say, film and television editing and graphics and sound. There's a lot of comparisons there. So I think that, yeah, I was just fortunate to be around it. And also, we grew up in tough circumstances. And I also was able to kind of go from like doing manual labor, like grass yard jobs, to making cash money from DJing. And I saw it as a way to, yeah, make a living and put money in my pocket. And then the bonus part about it was just all the amazing people that you get to meet along the way. It is a lot of work. It's really long hours, and clearly, social media and Instagram make DJing or musicians, looks like they're always having fun, but clearly there can be mental turbulence, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that later in life as a DJ. Probably in my mid to late 20s, I got to a point where I wanted to be able to play my own records, and then that took me into a journey of learning how to make music, which I found out was really hard for me to be able to make something that actually I liked enough that I could play in my DJ sets. And I started out kind of doing remixes or bootleg remixes of some of my favorite songs. Later, my journey took me to Chicago, and then I ended up in Philadelphia, where I met some really talented world class DJs and record producers. A gentleman by the name of King Britt, that's his real name, King James Britt. And King was an amazing, and still is an amazing, record producer and DJ. And he really took me under his wing and allowed me to sit in on recording sessions with him. And a lot of these recording sessions would be like with, really famous, successful people that I had their records. And it just seemed really I don't even know what the right words are, like synchronistic, or now a word that I've heard much later in life, synchrodestiny, that I was able to be there and learn from him and see how he kind of directed the musicians and ran the sessions and dealt with strong personalities. And I'm sure people that were also maybe experiencing mental turbulence. And then to kind of lead into the education thing, ultimately, I was recruited by accident to be an educator in Philadelphia. And what I mean by that is I never really sought out to become a college professor. But I was working in television in Philadelphia, and I had a colleague by the name of George Roach who said, "Hey, you're really good at this." And the Art Institute in downtown Philadelphia, they need someone to teach film and television editing. And I remember in the beginning, I was like, "George, I'm not a teacher. I don't know what to tell you." And ultimately, he took me down to the college, and I saw just how cool the campus was, the building and the facilities and the students. And then that's kind of led me on a multiple decade journey of balancing being on a university campus and making music, and then ultimately starting my own record labels and going on that journey, which, where you have to learn about business and marketing and entrepreneurship. And that kind of, yeah, leads us to the current time where I'm based here in Los Angeles. And I'm fortunate to 3 decades later plus to still be doing this, and I get to be on the UCLA campus in the UCLA School of Music and teach in the music industry program there. And it's so cool because, I mean, I wish they had something like that, when I was a
Yeah.
undergraduate student. So that kinda, yeah, that kinda brings us to current times.
Yeah. Yeah. If they'd had something like that, your advisor would have just been like, go there.
Absolutely. And what I love about our program, to give it a plug, is it's not just about like making music. Yeah, we're learning about business and marketing and, the future, very future forward business concepts and technologies and things that I feel that all creatives and artists need to be learning. And, it's interesting if a lot of times, of course, I'm always asked to give advice, should I go to music school? Should I learn to play an instrument? The answer is yes, but you also want to take as many of those business and marketing courses as you can as well. And I think the more that you learn about business and marketing, it's going to help you guide your career a little bit better and take some of the ease off maybe some of the mental turbulence that you might face when we get into those conversations.
Yeah. I like how your path just kind of took that winding road to get to where you are. And it sounds like you're really happy with where you wound up. So maybe that was the right path to do it. Do you feel like if you had known that teaching was an option, would you have done it sooner, or are you glad that it kind of was happenstance?
Well, I guess to be fair, there was a moment where I was in a film television course. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I did have this voice in my head say, "Hey, this is kind of cool. Maybe you could do that one day." Being a Gen Xer, and a lot of the university professors that I've had throughout the years, a lot of them had like, PhDs and were very academic research based. Now, I have a master's degree, but I tend to feel that real world experience is the best way to learn, even though I am an academic now, a scholar. And, my research is more real world. So I guess I probably had a thought in my head that I would never want to go through all that schooling, to get a PhD. The irony is my thought process maybe changed a little bit. Maybe one day I am open to that, even though I'd like to believe after, 30 plus years of doing this that I have multiple PhDs from doing it, right?
You need that honorary PhD where they're just like,
Right.
yes, here you go, hand it to you.
There you go. Well, the thing is you need someone to nominate you for that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anybody out there wants to help me out with that.
Can anyone nominate? Like, can I just like send something in and go here?
That's a really good question. I've never really looked into what the
Mhm.
process of that is, but
If you
but I
find
did go
out,
to under.
if
Yeah,
you find out that it could just be anybody, let me know. I'd
that's
be
right.
happy to.
Maybe it can be.
You kind of touched on this already, but being a DJ and a professor and an entrepreneur, like it's a lot. That's a lot of hours. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of expectations. How do you protect your own mental health with all of these demands and this career in this industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that it's an ongoing process. right? I feel like, we never have all the answers and are constantly making adjustments. For me, it's a combination of exercise. Going on a good walk sometimes is the best therapist for me. Walking up steep hills or hiking, training at the gym, having some kind of a meditation practice, which there's times I'm really good at it and there's other times that I fall off. I actually even try to, even if it's just for 2 minutes, I'll try to meditate before I perform to try to clear my mind in my head. And I'm pretty adamant, my wife will tell you if she pops in, I'm pretty adamant about my 8 hours of sleep and and be like, do what I can to make that happen. But also at the same time, I have to work in many time zones. We just got
Hmm.
back from Europe, and I'm getting ready to head back east to Philadelphia to play a show this weekend. So the other thing that I found that really helps me is taking naps, even if it's a 15-minute nap, I probably prefer an hour. But I find that my mood improves after a nap. If I'm feeling a certain way, if I'm experiencing mental turbulence, a nap does wonders for me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess that would be my trifecta: exercise, meditation, and naps.
Yeah. Hey, I love a good nap. And my kids know I get headaches sometimes, and if I don't like take care of it right away, it'll turn into a migraine. So sometimes I'll just be like, "Hey, I need like 20 minutes. I'm closing my door. If you need something, come in here." But they're both really good. Fortunately, they're older and 11 and 18, and the 18-year-old just went off to college, but my 11-year-old, I guess fortunately, unfortunately, also gets headaches, so he knows what that feels like. And so they're both very good about, okay, we're going to stay quiet out here. If we need mom, she's right there. But I'm very protective of my naps whenever I need them. So for sure, for
Absolutely.
sure understand that. And speaking of mental health, Rose, I just want to pause here and acknowledge your comment in the chat about your trauma anniversary coming up soon. And you said that it's eating you up, and that's something that is it can be incredibly difficult to deal with. And I just want to say that I hear you and I see you, and I hope that everything goes as well as it possibly can around something like that. So much love to you right now. Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
Hmm. That's interesting. I've had like some kind of corporate leadership roles in music and audio, and I was working for an in-flight entertainment company. It's a division of BPP out of London. It's called Spafax, and part of our job was to license podcast content, and a lot of it was like kind of true crime type content. And one of the companies that we worked with was Wondery, who I think that Amazon now owns. But Jen Sargent was somebody who was the CEO of Wondery, and she turned me on to kind of their catalog, if you will, of true crime podcasts. Now, this has been a few years ago, pre-pandemic, but I remember there was I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favorite, but I thought it was a pretty fascinating story, the Dirty John
Mm,
series, and I'm trying to remember some other ones. There was, can't remember the name of it, but yeah, there was a few from Wondery that I was listening to because part of it was my job. We had to do what was called a content review, our team to kind of review the dialogue and request any edits if we felt that something could be offensive on there for content that was on board an airline
mm.
fleet. But I do remember as I was listening to that with my team doing a content review that I thought it was a pretty interesting story. So there's one for you.
Yeah. It's I imagine you have to be really careful what you're allowed to show on flights too. Like that's probably a more rigorous screening
Yeah.
than a lot of other industries would be, because you're in this kind of situation where you don't get to know your audience necessarily. It's just whoever's on the flight. And also flying is kind of a high stress situation already. You don't want to aggravate that for anybody. So yeah,
That's right.
that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, it can be. And, I didn't realize until I had that role, the content review that all the music, podcasts, and movies and TV shows, sometimes, of course, they have to edit out any plane
Mm-hmm.
crashes or, anything, air turbulence or other things in those that could, yeah, cause people stress for
Yeah.
sure.
You're gonna see the show Yellow Jackets on there, that's for sure.
Probably not.
I've
Good music, good,
oh,
good
great.
music, cure good, yeah, music supervision licensing for that episode for that show. What
Yeah.
was that? 90s?
Yeah,
It was
it
quite.
was all the 90s music and everything. I watched it with my oldest. We're caught up now, and just about every episode, I would wind up singing along to something, and he was like, "God, Mom, you're so old." Like, yeah, okay, calm down. Great music, though. I mean,
Yeah, and it just feels to us like, I don't, at least for speaking for myself, not that long ago. It's kind of,
yes,
yeah,
very much not that long ago. I don't feel as old as I am. That's for sure. And it's one of those like, what do you mean old? And he has like a Nirvana shirt. I see
right.
lots of people with Nirvana shirts and all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, so come on.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the kids are wearing Nirvana or Prince or the
Mm-hmm.
Ramones or Led Zeppelin or Fleetwood Mac. And I'm like, do you
Yeah.
really know their music or can you name one member of that band?
When did you first realize that music could be more than entertainment and something that just really impacts your mental and emotional well-being?
I feel like pretty early on, I had a turbulent childhood and music was like my best friend and my escape. So I felt like, yeah, when there was, trauma or weirdness, I would say, that was going on, I would be able to go into my room and play records and escape through music. And then to fast forward, I remember a moment where this is probably back in college where we had a really fun night at the club and I had a couple people come up to me at the end and they were like, thank you so much. That was really awesome. I just had a really traumatic week and I was really just kind of able to dance it off and lose myself kind of on the dance floor and leave all my problems behind. Which, it's interesting because that can be lyrical themes, that are used in music. And I think it was that point that I really was like, huh, that's interesting. And then I started to have conversations with other DJs. And then there kind of became this common thread that, yeah, a lot of people came to dance to escape, to dance their problems away. Something that my wife likes to try to get me to do in the morning is to, if we wake up and we're not feeling that great, or if there's something on our mind, is to, to dance it off. The irony is I'm not a good dancer and I actually don't necessarily enjoy to dance a lot. Maybe I will at some point, but I do feel that there's that moment when I look out into the crowd or the dance floor and I see people, especially if someone who's like dancing with their eyes closed and they're just really lost in the music. So I think that I did recognize probably in my early 20s the great power of music and especially people being able to dance and leave their problems behind. And then, a lot of these people that I would meet too, some of them just wanted to come and dance and they weren't necessarily drinkers, right? Which I think a lot of people probably associate like clubbing or, rave culture or other things like that with taking things or drinking their problems away. But there
Mm.
are a lot of people who just, are able to come and put themselves in a better place mentally, right? From getting lost in the music.
Yeah, there's studies and whole books written on this, but a lot of folks will find that dancing and especially moving like your hips and different parts of your body and everything can really release a lot of things that you're holding on to. And it can be really cathartic for some folks. I'm not a huge dancer. I dance around with my kids all the time, but I don't like go out dancing. But we dance. My 11-year-old and I were dancing around in the kitchen earlier. We just kind of are goofy. It's not good dancing. It's not fancy dancing. If it was ever recorded, I'd be like, oh God, but that's not what it's for.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a good, this is my dance move.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
I do dance around a little bit when I'm really getting into it, if the crowd, and the right sound system and there's a right situation. Yeah, I'm definitely moving around. I'm not definitely not a statue on stage
Mhm.
or in the DJ booth. But yeah, I learned kind of early on that yeah, there's great power in this. And this just made me think of something that in my and in this college town where I was playing a lot were on their nights off or before their shift, there would be a lot of girls, that danced in strip clubs and stuff would come,
Mhm.
and they would do that to kind of cleanse themselves of the weird energy that they might experience that night or had just experienced. And there were some really interesting conversations that I would have with them as well
Mhm.
about their profession and why they were doing it and why they were at our club night trying to dance off that weird energy as well too.
Yeah, dancing for themselves instead of dancing for others and kind
That's
of
right.
getting that reset, especially if dancing is something they enjoy and not just something they're doing to make money. If they really enjoy it,
That's,
kind of
yeah,
taking that ownership back. I could see that definitely being a big part of their own self-care and their own rituals that they need. So,
that's right. Yeah.
from your perspective, what is it about music that makes it such a powerful tool for healing and connection and emotional release?
Well, I think there's like clearly the emotional part about it. Music um, can trigger certain emotions, maybe good and bad. And then it's interesting, as part of my graduate studies, I started to really study the science of frequencies that
Hmm.
are used, even though I was already well aware that dance music in particular, underground house and techno music can be very healing. But what I started to learn through my research is that there were certain frequency bands, particularly 40, which is not necessarily something that you hear, but you can feel. You can see this big subwoofer sitting here. So typically you need a large speaker or a subwoofer that can move a lot of air. Through my graduate studies and a bit of my research, I found that 40 hertz frequency, which is typically where the sub bass or the kick drum would be for house or techno music, um, in some ways stop and even reverse certain mental ailments,
Oh, wow.
dementia. Yeah, it's been proven in a laboratory that it can even slow down or reverse dementia and other diseases of the mind. And I would say because some of these lower frequencies, especially really hit us in the chest and the abdomen areas, it's almost like this cleansing that's forcing things out of us. And, a lot of people tend to clearly feel things here, even though it might be going on here. There was a workshop that I went to, I don't know, I'm going to say it was back in 2018 or 19. It was this workshop about the study called Heart Math. And it talked about the magnetic kind of waves that our heart can even put out and other things, and how basically it was about being resilient, right? Like learning to be resilient, and how we tend to, even though we think it's in the mind, that there's something about the heart and the stomach having its own kind of mind, if you will, or maybe the nervous system. It's all connected. So to get back to the heart of your question, I feel like these lower end frequencies in particular kind of can, I don't know, whether it's like gamma rays. I'm just trying to think of some kind of verbal analogy of like how we might want to beam light at ourselves, because a
Mhm.
lot of times we talk about in different meditation practices, white light, be the light, step into the light. Uh, but the interesting thing about sound is sound frequencies, are waves, and really light and sound are all waves. Different lights are wave frequencies. So I think there's definitely some legitimate science behind certain sound frequencies, which then would be in music, that can heal us. Clearly, I have a lot more research to go, and your listeners can actually do some research on this. You could clearly, throw it in your favorite search engine, or you could even have a conversation with AI about it. And so when I started doing this research, I found that there are certain frequencies, I'd have to call up my research to share them with you, that certain frequency bands and even chanting and other things that exist that throughout the millennia have been used by different cultures, uh, even long before we had, house and techno music, to be able to utilize as a way to heal the mind or temporarily remove those type of thoughts from us, right? I'm not sure where I heard it or I read it, but there was maybe it was Dr. Wayne Dyer in one of his talks. He talked about the disagreeable roommate that's in our head that sometimes that says something that is not helpful to us, or that dialogue that can go on in our head. And what I find interesting about music and certain sound frequencies is that can kind of keep that voice silent, at least for a while.
We learn more and more all the time about the ways that our bodies interact with things like sound and things like light and all these things that we can't necessarily see. Of course, we think we can see light, but can you actually see it touching your body? You really can't. And can you actually see the waves of sound as they're coming to you? You can hear them, but you can't see them. So we kind of have to use our other senses for that. But the studies are really fascinating, and there's so much more I think that we have to learn from that for sure.
Absolutely.
Do you think there are different genres in general that resonate with different emotional needs beyond just like these specific frequencies or these specific beats? Like, does jazz hit different than R&B for sometimes some emotional states or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had my lecture slides in front of me because typically, like jazz music, if I remember, tends to make people be more reflective, in their minds. Dance music clearly falls within more that rhythmic state, which takes us to our tribal days, which might um not necessarily the reptilian brain, but yeah, take us way back to that campfire experience, maybe where people were just pounding on things and rhythmic things. But yeah, what's interesting for me, and this to take it back to the 90s and the early 2000s when I was a club DJ in my college years, is there were certain types of music that I could almost guarantee you that if I played, a fight would break out,
Yeah.
which was interesting to kind of take it to the opposite for a second. And what I really knew then that I didn't necessarily have any research to back me up is there was something about underground house and techno music that when you play that type of music that it's like very uplifting, and even though it might use minor chords, overall it's a bit more of a positive thing, and it tends to bring people of all walks of life together. I've never been part of or performed at an event where if you played underground house and techno music that there was a fight. But if we ever played like a rock and roll song or an aggressive hip hop track, especially if there was a lot of alcohol involved with college students, it was much more likely that a fight could break out.
Mm.
So even though I might like, say, AC/DC, You Shook Me All Night Long, which was believe it or not, a song that we used to play, if people had too much to drink, they could get really aggressive. And I definitely love me some underground hip hop, and especially, classic 90s hip hop. But, depending on, once again, how much people had to drink, it could lead to aggressive behavior. So even though I love I'm really eclectic actually for my own personal listening taste. But yeah, that's why as a performer, I tend to focus to do performance stuff more house techno realm. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about the ambient sound healing
Yeah.
stuff that I've been getting active into. But yeah, I've kind of literally witnessed across the board because there was this one particular venue that we were up like way above the crowd and I could watch the entire room. And I could watch it throughout the night where people would start to come in and it would build to even hundreds, even thousands of people there. And there was this thing that you get to see and witness from that perspective as a DJ. And ultimately, even before I knew that it was labeled this, I started calling it dance floor psychology. And what I mean by that is you could see all these mini dramas of human interaction unfolding throughout the room. For example, there could be a guy and a girl in the room, and they might, have an eye for each other, but maybe the guy is too shy to go ask her to dance, so somebody else and dances with the girl. And maybe she doesn't even really want to hang out with that guy, but she ends up hanging out with him. And that's just kind of one of many examples of all these mini dramas. But you could also see people's, body language, standing like this, being cut off if they were unhappy. And there's just all these things that's even hard for me to verbalize that you would witness throughout a 6-hour night. And then, of course, playing music. What was interesting about my early DJ career, it's not like now at a lot of clubs or festivals where you just have this 1 hour DJ set, which in my mind is just absolutely ridiculous because you're just getting kind of warmed up in an hour. But when you played music throughout the entire night by yourself, you would be able to take people on a journey and you would be able to witness all these energetic changes throughout the night. And so I think that after literally, I don't know if you've ever read or any of your guests have talked about the Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers book, where he quantified to become world class at something, you need 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. And whatever your field is,
Hmm.
um, gosh, I don't even know how many hours I would have now at this, but I would say even during that time, I'd surpassed my 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. And when you're doing that, you're able to witness, see, and experience and feel things that can't really be taught in a
Mm.
classroom. Like there's a course that I helped create at UCLA. It's called The DJ as Performer. And I have lectures about what I call dance floor psychology, reading the energy in the room, trying to read people's body languages, feel and read their emotions, and let that help drive the music selections that you make instead of curating a playlist and sticking to it. I think
Hmm.
that's one of the things that separates a great DJ from somebody who doesn't quite have the experience yet, is that you're able to show up at the gig and you don't really know what you're going to play. You just read the energy one track or one song at a time versus somebody who builds a playlist, they show up and they stick to it. Because the thing is when you do that, I'm sitting here in my studio, maybe making a playlist, but when I show up to play the gig, the energy is going to be very different in the
Yeah.
room. Just kind of using that as an example. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that ultimately DJs and musicians have great power, whether they know it or not. And I'm very keen and well aware of the emotional power that music can wield upon the audience. So I always do the best that I can to leave people better than I found them. If that makes any
Oh,
sense.
I love that. Yeah, that's really great. When you were talking about the fights breaking out and everything, it made me think of that one classical piece that like caused a riot whenever it was first performed. I can never, I brought this up probably like 5 times throughout the course of this show, and I can never remember the name of it. But there is a musical piece, it's a classical piece, and when it was first played, there were people like screaming in the audience. And you think now like, oh, it must have been really weird. And you go listen to it and you're like, no, that's not weird. But at the time it was something that was different. And I guess it just touched everyone's emotions in a weird way that night.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up. I feel like I should know that, but I've not heard of it.
Yeah. And I wish, is it the spring riot classical I don't even know how to search for it. Man, Rite of Spring. Oh my gosh. Yes. There you go. Yes, Rite of Spring by Stravinsky. There were riots. Hi, Hebe. Thank you so much. I appreciate you very much knowing that, first of all, and piping up with it. Appreciate that very much.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to look that up and add
Yeah.
this to my lectures about how music can control environments and people's emotions.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful piece. Like you go listen to it now and it's like, wow, but it is filled with emotion, truly. So it's very cool. Very cool.
So it caused fighting, huh?
Yes, yeah, it caused fighting and people like stormed out of the theater and
Huh.
yeah, it was quite a bit. I think there was fainting involved. This is a long time ago. So
My
yeah,
goodness, I
it's
should
really
know
cool.
this. I'm going to talk to one of the musicology professors about it, who I'm sure incorporate this into their lectures.
Yeah, dude. I love that very, very much. Again, reminding folks that if you have any questions for our guests, feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll make sure to get them addressed while we are here and live. So in your teaching at UCLA, how do you talk with students about well-being and sustainability, their own well-being and the sustainability in a career that's often super high pressure?
Yeah, I try to have real talk with them and let them
Mm,
know that this is not for the faint of heart, like pursuing a career in the arts in general takes a lot of courage, and it's not a traditional career path. Historically in, say, a career or a medical environment is if you do a really good job and you get along well with your coworkers, ultimately in the corporate world, there's somewhat of a progression, right? I can start here,
yeah.
ultimately we end up here. Maybe, yeah, in the medical field and maybe legal field. Maybe you start out as a junior attorney, and ultimately maybe you can work your way up to become partner of the firm, right? But in the music world, it's a roller coaster ride, right? And it's funny, one of my good friends, and he was somewhat of a mentor to me in Philadelphia, Dazia Blakey, who's an amazing DJ, record producer. His uncle was the legendary jazz drummer Art Blakey. He used to say to me, just you always want to try to stay up and coming, because once you reach the top, the only way is down.
Mm,
And I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that philosophy, but I think in some ways, I often wonder if that was his own self-help mechanism, to mentally prepare himself if he were to blow up and, have a number one record or become super popular. But I do think about that often, and I share that with my students, and I ask them what their thoughts are on it.
mm,
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm sure your viewers and listeners know that, music's very subjective, right? And we live in this world now, especially because of social media. There's a lot of memes about, and I'll stick with DJing. There'll be a meme of like a split screen, and on the left side it'll be like what DJs used to do. And it's basically a DJ in front of hundreds or thousands of records, like preparing for their performance, doing research focused on the music. But on the right hand side, it might show somebody in the weight room, like lifting weights and trying to look cool and fit, or, with a bunch of ink work or some, costume or get up. And I feel
mhm,
like social media has definitely changed the game when it comes to being an artist, right? It seems like it's more about being a personality. Not that it hasn't been in music. I mean, clearly there's a lot of larger than life personalities in the music industry, and that is part of the formula of being an artist. You can't just talent alone is not going to get you where you want to go. Isn't there? There's a proverb about talent, right? Talent and genius.
mm,
The world is filled full of geniuses and talented people that basically don't go anywhere, because the key thing is persistence, right? Like you have to, if you really want to do this, you have to be extremely resilient and be extremely persistent. And persistence and resilience and deliberate practice will always surpass talent, right? Malcolm Gladwell, once again, to cite the book Outliers, cited this many times in his 10,000-hour deliberate practice rule. Exhibit A could be somebody who's naturally gifted, we'll say, at music, but maybe they don't practice. Maybe they
mhm,
don't work as hard. Exhibit B is somebody that might not be as talented and they have to work maybe two, three, four times as hard. But if they're willing to put their 10,000 hours of deliberate practice in and constantly keep working at their crafts, then ultimately they will surpass A. And so I think that what I've found, what I've experienced is, it seems that a lot of artists that may possess a lot of gifts who don't do the deliberate practice may experience more mental turbulence because they're not working on their resilience or their persistence, and they
mm,
feel that talent alone might get them to where they want to go. So that is definitely part of my ongoing discussion and lectures with my students in the DJ as Performer course, and I also talk about that in my business related courses as well. Wanting to become an artist is a tough road to walk. And typically, I think that what happens is a lot of artists, including myself, might look up to someone else and you want to try to replicate what they've done. Right. But that's not the way to success, because ultimately everybody has to walk their own road
mm,
alone, right? And walking that road alone, you can either have two different mindsets. You can either accept that adventure, embrace it, and have fun with the unknown. But then on the flip side, I think it's human nature to not like the unknown, right? We want to know things. We want to know what's coming around the corner. And I think the unknown part for some people creates a lot of mental turbulence,
Yeah.
including myself. And it's something that I'm in the process of trying to enjoy and embrace the unknown and even try to gamify it a bit. When my wife and I aren't religious per se, I would say we're probably more spiritual, but one of the things that we say when we're, I guess, giving grace at a meal is we say something to the effect of thank you for all the amazing things that are going to happen in our lives that we don't even know about yet. Because what I have found through my own career, and trust me, it's been a roller coaster ride. It's been up, it's been down, and then I feel like the roller coaster is going back up for me as of late. And I've been in this business long enough to sense when we're going up or when we could be trending towards a dip. And one of my favorite authors, Seth Godin, wrote a book called The Dip, and about how you have to be able to push through the dip with things. And I think that what I've learned is if you just keep going and you don't give up, that things ultimately can work out for you. Now, maybe they're not going to work out exactly as you would like them to, or what your ultimate, dream or vision is. But I think that's part of the key is if you want something bad enough, is you just have to keep going and you can't give up. And there's times in my life that I look back and think, wow, like if I would have called it quits and given up, all these other amazing things would have never happened.
Mm.
Um, and just like anybody else, like I said, I've experienced mental turbulence. And, even earlier today, I had a bit of mental turbulence over misplacing something and kind of laughed at myself afterwards. Like, here I'm getting ready to go on a podcast talking about mental health and I'm having a moment, right? So clearly, you know, I feel like it's like being a surfer trying to stay on your surfboard in life, like waves are going to come and knock you off the surfboard. And, going back to your question about what I share with my students, it's like how to get back on the surfboard and find that next wave to catch and try to ride it, right? Because that's just how life is going to be. And the life of an artist is a lot of uncertainty.
Mhm.
Um, and another thing that I share with them is like I say, hey, it's okay to have another job while you are doing your art because it's way better to have money coming in and knowing that your bills are paid and that you're going to eat than to end up on your friend's couch because it's going to be hard to be an artist. It's already hard enough to be an artist, but if you are a broke and penniless artist, that is going to create even more mental turbulence for you. So I tend to remix the whole like, a lot of people are like, quit your job, follow your dreams type thing. So I tend to share with them, like, hey, it's okay to have another opportunity because it's better to make money and know that your bills are paid and that you're fed so that you have an opportunity to put yourself in a position to pursue your art. And you want to be careful about looking at Instagram or TikTok and seeing artists that you look up to because there's a lot of fine print behind what you're seeing, right?
Mhm.
They could be working other jobs and doing other things to supplement their income, right? So I tend to be very open about that, even about my own income streams, about how my, professorship and that type of stuff in a lot of ways uh, creates more stability and, you know, a firmer footing so that I can say no more than I say yes as an artist. Because one of the things that I found once I got to a certain point, I crossed over. And what
Mm.
I mean by that is I feel like there's two types of DJs. There's the DJ who is, I mean, well, really all DJs are being of service because they're ultimately entertaining people, but there's 2 columns of DJs. One column of a DJ is you are of service, you take requests, you do what the client is asking you to do, like, say, DJing a wedding, right?
Mhm.
And then you have the other column where you're an artist. People buy a ticket or pay a cover charge to come and hear you play what you're going to play, and you don't take requests. And I found myself like, yeah, I'm not interested in taking requests. I'm an artist. I want to curate an experience um, for people, and they hopefully know what they're getting into. Because I found that if I was going to only DJ and I didn't have a number one record on the charts, that I might have to accept gigs to pay my mortgage that I don't want to play. And I'm not a good actor, right? I'm not good at being behind the equipment and faking a smile and playing music that I don't like. So it became well aware to me that thankfully I enjoy these other things. And I'm really fortunate, and it's been very intentional, the life that I've designed being a music industry professor,
Hmm.
because they feed each other. It's like a circle. The more accomplishments I have as a DJ, as a record producer, label, co-label owner, the more I learn, the more I can feed and share with my students, the more it makes my curriculum real world, and it's a circle and they feed each other. Uh, so I know that I'm very fortunate to be in that position now, but it definitely took me a while to get there and to figure out that right formula and mix for me.
Yeah.
So I'm very open with my students about that, that they should find opportunities that even if it's a marketing job, maybe if it's even if it's not, directly related to their own music career, if you can take a marketing job and learn about how marketing works, take what you can from that and use it for your own career, right?
Hmm.
So hopefully that answers some of your questions. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other things that I share with them about, the difficulty of it. I mean, here's the thing is I don't want to be a downer. I'm not trying to scare
Yeah.
them away from doing it. It's really funny. I have an awesome guest speaker, Sean Badger, out of Phoenix, Arizona. He's a DJ Sinbad. He also owns a live music venues there. And as a guest speaker, he always starts off his talk. He's like, "Don't do it. I wouldn't do it." And he's half being serious and half joking. And he says, "Look, if you come to me in 6 months and you're still going after this and you want to do it, I'm going to help you. But I'm just letting you know right away that you know this is a career path that's filled full of manholes and potholes,
Yeah.
as you walk down the street, you know?
Yeah. You have to have the drive, but then also you have to figure out how to protect your peace a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. And, the reality is when you're in the entertainment business, you're going to deal with people and you're going to have to learn how to uh, protect your energy. And for
Hmm.
me, it's almost like when I step into an event, I try to create this imaginary force field around me because I feel like everybody can be influenced by people's energies or things, their pain body, as Eckhart Tolle would say. And when you show up at an event and there's hundreds or thousands of people, or when you're on stage, they're beaming all this energy at you. So I'm well aware of that before the performance or after, I need to almost like cleanse myself from what everybody might be going through or things that they're carrying um, there, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah. We've got a great question in the chat as well that I want to make sure that we get to. So, Phoebe says, as a recovering music adjunct myself, I'm curious how you are approaching supporting your students' mental health in and out of the classroom in this moment, with the ongoing federal presence in LA doubtless affecting your students' sense of safety both creatively and just in their day to day.
I mean, we have real talk about it. I'm like, if I have a student that comes to me and they're like, I'm really concerned. I'm concerned that I'm not going to be able to keep up in the class. I'm always like,
Hmm.
look, you got to take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they tell you to secure your mask on the plane before helping
Hmm.
others. Uh, and it's a tricky thing because you know, I tend to, what's the right word? It's like stay apolitical or like independent right down the line. There might be certain feelings or things that I'm having, but I do tend to avoid those things and always have. But I do try to hold space for them and listen. And, the universities are really great about providing resources to professors. And, we are mandated reporters, so
Hmm.
if we're concerned about somebody's mental health, or there's been a situation maybe where they've been violated physically or other things, yeah, we have to let them know, like, hey, I want to stop you right now. Just so you know what you're sharing with me, you can, and you're in a safe space, but I might not be able to honor keeping it between us like you
Yeah.
want me to. By law, I might have to go share this with somebody. So I just want you to know that before you continue. Are you okay with that? Because what you share with me, I might have to connect you with a counselor or somebody who can help you with this thing that you're navigating. So it's definitely not something that I was trained on properly. I feel like if anything, once again, I didn't go to university to become a professor. We do get a lot of training, and there is a lot of great training that we do receive. But yeah, I would say that um, during the pandemic and post pandemic have been some of the more challenging years
Mm.
to be an educator, especially here in California and Los Angeles because of all the weirdness that's been going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen students who are really holding back a lot? Like, have you had to advise any of your students, like, either on, I understand why you're holding back, or, they're coming to you and saying, I feel like I can't express myself because of the current political climate, or, anything like that, global situation, anything?
I feel like if anything, I try to create this space where people feel comfortable
That's great.
about
Yeah.
sharing things. I think it's different because I mean, first and foremost, I come from a music background, and music is all about community. I feel like musicians tend to be maybe a bit more open and less closed off than maybe somebody would at a corporate office. I don't, um, but yeah, I do what I can to let them know they need to take care of themselves first, and that, yeah, your studies are important and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a really good way. I hope the students appreciate that, because I know not all professors are that way. I don't want to say especially not in Texas, but that's where my kid is going to school. So, but I hope that they appreciate that and recognize that that is something that is of value, and that I hope they take advantage of it as well.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't fully know what the resources are, say, for a university in Texas, but I do know that, well, hopefully we'll see where all the budget cuts fall.
Hmm.
Um, but hopefully there will be continued resources for our students, in the California university systems to receive the kind of help that they need. Because what's interesting, even though depending on which ranking you look at, UCLA is typically number one or number two public university in the United States, and it's a very hard school to get into. The interesting
Hmm.
thing, I think, is I don't know that I would have gotten into UCLA because my grades weren't that great in undergrad. But a lot of people might look at a school like UCLA and think it's a lot of affluent students,
Mm,
but we also have a lot of students that come from underprivileged
yeah.
backgrounds, and don't necessarily have a lot of financial resources. Um, I also teach at Cal State University Dominguez Hills. It's CUSUDH, and many of those students um, are from Hispanic or Latin, African American backgrounds. It's literally adjacent to Compton. And what's interesting about that university campus is there are more students there that are the first, maybe even in their family, to
Hmm.
attend a university. So I feel like I've probably been a little bit more concerned for some of them, like if their parents don't have their paperwork in order.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is they might, and they still could get swept up, in a raid right now. So I
Yeah.
feel like those particular students are maybe a little bit more on edge, if you will. But yeah, it's really disappointing to see how I feel like higher education is under attack right now. And I'm really hoping that, as my mom used to say, this too shall pass, right? And I'm hoping that's going to be the case
Yeah. Let's get
because
past.
it's definitely making it more difficult for the students to learn, and
Hmm.
it's making it more difficult for the professors to do their job.
Yeah. I would love for it to pass quickly. Let's get through it real fast. Speed run this bitch. Let's go. Please, please, come on.
Yes.
What advice do you give young artists who are struggling with things like self-doubt or anxiety or perfectionism?
Yeah, well, I suffer from perfectionism as well. I think my wife does too. It's definitely, I mean, it's a balance, right? Because you want your work to be at a certain level, right? Ultimately, hopefully you're proud of and you love what you do. There's a lot of viral videos from Rick Rubin going around of him saying, "I don't make it for them, I make it for me." And, there is some truth to that. I mean, I think he's in a unique position to be able to say that with all his success, but I would say to lean into the positive side of what he's saying is, yeah, ultimately, I think you wanna make yourself happy, you wanna be proud. The unfortunate thing about music and the arts is there's a lot of this external validation. You want people to say, "Oh my god, that's an amazing painting," or, "Wow, your film, is awesome. It really touched me," your piece of music or your DJ performance. And it's a slippery slope, that type of profession, right? Because you're looking for this external validation. A lot of in the music industry, in particular, artists are always thinking about, fans. I want more fans. I like to use the word community member. I like to switch that out for fan because it feels a bit more personal, uh, doesn't feel as transactional. So, but yeah, it's definitely tough. And I think the more confidence that you build on your journey, that maybe helps you with some of the self doubt or the imposter syndrome or the disagreeable roommate in your head that we can't remember the quote where that came from. But yeah, I would say the more deliberate practice, the more confidence that you can build, I think is going to help you move forward with your career.
Yeah, and I'll also say, as someone who struggles with self-doubt and anxiety and perfectionism myself, like, sometimes it just doesn't go away. And sometimes you just gotta figure out how to cope with it, and if you're finding yourself dealing with that in and out every day, or if you're getting, like, through a rough patch with it, find the things that work for you, and those things are very unique to you. But yeah, it's if it doesn't go away, it doesn't mean that you're broken. Just some of us have it all the time.
That's right. And that's why we're always doing the work, right? The
Mhm.
work is never ends. It's not like you're able to just like, okay, I'm fixed, I'm all good.
Yeah.
I think it's an ongoing process throughout life,
Yeah,
right?
most definitely. You mentioned the soundscapes earlier, so I know during the pandemic you recorded the Tropical Stardust Meditations, which is a soundscapes and ambient project. What drew you to that? And do you think that meditative music really connects differently to mental health? We talked about, the club and the festival sets and everything, but how does it connect differently to mental health?
Well, I'd always wanted to experiment with ambient music. I think it was Brian Eno's Music for Airports, which I think came out in the 1970s. And there were other ambient things that I had listened to in experimental music. And so when we got to the pandemic, clearly there was a lot of weirdness going on, especially in the big city. And my wife and I were leaning into our meditation practice, and there were some meditations that we were listening to, and the music that they would use would take me out of it. It would distract me. And so I was like, can I make something that I could meditate to? Let me just start with that. And I had this vision one day during a meditation with having monkey brain, like we tend to do during meditations. But I had this vision of the sunrise and the sunset, and I love the sun. It's a very powerful thing for me. It's one of my favorite things about California is watching the sunset on the ocean with the mountains. And I just sat down in my studio and just started like calling up different sounds, instruments through a keyboard and pushing chords. And then I just kind of accidentally landed on this chord and was like, whoa, what is that? And literally just like, okay, let's do this. Let's record it. And so I started out with one composition that I ended up naming Sunbeam. And yeah, I purposely made the first version really short because that was the other thing that I recognized with my own busy life and with other people's busy life. They don't necessarily have time to sit down and meditate for
Sure.
30 minutes or whatever. So I literally on purpose made like a 3-minute composition. I was like, hey, even if it's just somebody can just do it for 3 minutes to maybe reset. So the original version, yeah, was recorded just maybe 3 minutes, 3 seconds, and then ultimately I did record an extended version, which I released separately. And then the other compositions that were on there was one that I think it's called Moonbeam, that's like a lower, more droning tone. And I recorded that one to tapping into those lower frequencies that we were talking about earlier in the show to try to maybe like I had this visualization of the lower end frequencies, like pushing any impurities or negative thoughts out of my body. There was another composition that I made that has these on purpose kind of tonal clashes, same kind of thing to try to like push things out that aren't supposed to be there. And then there was another one that ended up kind of by accident, ended up being about 20 minutes. It's called Space Voyager, but it was more to like kind of sleep to, nap to. But yeah, it just all really happened by accident because I feel like, most of my production career has been focused on making music that people dance to. So I took an
Mhm.
opportunity during some forced downtime to, yeah, record something that I normally wouldn't be able to do and not have to worry about any commercial concerns or success. And then what's interesting is kind of organically, I'd have different yoga teachers or meditation teachers reach out to me, be like, "Hey, it'd be cool if I use this in my class or my practice." I'm like, "Great, awesome, do it." So that's, yeah, kind of the backstory on that. And I've been wanting to make a follow up, and I've had some ideas. I've learned so much since I recorded that, I think in May of 2020. Uh, and clearly, I've learned a lot. I've done a lot of research. I'd completed my master's degree since
Mhm.
then and learned a lot more about those frequencies. So I am definitely looking forward to revisiting and maybe making a follow up to it one day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that forced downtime comment was something that I think we all had a little bit of forced downtime. Some baked bread, some created music, some did little projects that they hadn't done in many years, and it really brought us all together a little bit in that way. Kindred Soul says, I have a similar question to Mama Foxfire, but I'm taking it in a different direction. How does one handle a student who is very full of ego? I always think of guitarists. It can be anyone. Many happen to be interested in guitar. Is there a method you have to take that almost toxic ego and turn it into something that can lend itself to talent, creativity, and being a positive influence to your community? Any thoughts on that?
Hmm. That's a really great question. And yeah, it's funny. I can think of several students that are like that. Yeah, they're really strong willed, maybe have a lot of ego. Um, And in some ways, yeah, I could probably even see the 14 to 19-year-old version of me in them with that. Yeah, it's interesting because you don't want to diminish anybody's light, right? You want people to be able to shine bright. And I typically feel that in that type of situation, it's probably more of a one-on-one conversation instead of confronting them in front of the group. But yeah, I typically try to talk to them one on one and maybe not directly say, "Hey, what's up with all the attitude and the ego?" I tend to be like, just want to talk to them and lower their guard or their shield a little bit. Maybe let's just say about their guitar, their craft. It could be DJing. And I might be like, "Hey, look, it's important to feel confident, but let's not like be cocky or overbearing." And there's times, especially when you walk into a recording studio, that you have to put your ego on the shelf before you enter the room. Because when everybody goes into that recording studio, we all need to come from a place of love and it's teamwork. There is no I in team. And so typically that's how I approach it since it's music related and ultimately a guitar player, all performers will need to enter into the studio. I use that analogy of before we enter the studio, let's put our ego on the shelf and come in here and be team players. Because if you go in there with a lot of attitude like that, that's not going to go well. And you're probably not going to be asked back. And
Yeah.
another way I handle that is I talk about how you want to get along well with others because you
Mm,
could be the most talented musician, but if you don't get along well with others, they're not going to want to have you back. So that's another way I approach that.
yeah. I think those are both fair things to kind of take to someone and say. And especially whenever you are in that younger range, you don't have all the life skills and the life knowledge either. So it's a very teachable moment, I feel like, in some cases.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How has your wife's work as an MFT in training influenced the way you think about music's role in mental health or community?
Well, we have a lot of conversations about research and her practice. She's in practicum now and will soon start to get to work with patients. Uh, we haven't necessarily had a lot of music related conversations, but what we have talked about is like the binaural beats
Yeah.
um, type stuff. And I think that I can't remember what it's called, but we even found an app. If when she steps back in here, I can ask her. Um, so we have talked about that. There's also the acronym is escaping me right now of using sound. What is that?
EMDR?
EMDR. Thank you. So we have had some conversations about that, and I do think that my wife is exploring that and might even be. I think she's had a couple sessions of that with her therapist. So
Hmm.
I'm definitely really interested in that type of stuff. Um, yeah, so I think that's the type of conversations that we've had, and like I said, what I already mentioned earlier in your show was dancing out, certain energies, right?
Yeah. I just posted a couple of links because I think it's important if someone is interested in EMDR. It's really great. It's a really great tool. It is not for everyone. So if that piqued your interest and you want to learn more about it, there's a link to Cleveland Clinic has an article that's a pretty good one. So feel free to look into that. And then also just more about binaural beats because those are fascinating to me. So if someone else is interested in going and looking at that, feel free to click through on that as well.
Yeah, and I just saw my wife by, but I think that she was using the binaural beats to help you focus a bit more during studying. Was that how you were using binaural beats? It's a droning sound. EMDR is not necessarily sound or music. It's more the
It's the
eye
light.
thing.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's the light that
Yeah, I
goes
was thinking
across.
with I know there is some other types of sound work, if you will, other than the sound healing frequencies
Mm-hmm.
that we've talked about.
Yeah. And you can do EMDR with sounds on either side. It depends on some people have better reception whenever it's a light that goes back and forth, or some people have a better reception whenever it's on the other sides and everything. I'm sure there's one that I'm not aware of as well. That's the one I'm familiar with though.
Sure. And I think she was just trying to tell me we've talked about like the bowls, like the sound
Singing bowls,
bowls,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
singing bowls. Yeah.
And Kindred Soul says I found something similar 10 to 15 years ago to help me with my math work, particularly. Yeah, you can find all kinds of things. And there's been all kinds of studies on sound and how it can, like we were talking about earlier, enhance your focus, enhance your academic performance, whatever it is you're looking for. Definitely look into some of the studies for that. They're really fascinating, really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Music and sound is, yeah, are powerful, powerful healers for sure.
Yeah. What's one song or set that you played that still gives you goosebumps because of the energy that it created?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I would say recently when my wife and I were in Belgium, I played at the very difficult to pronounce festival, Pukkelpop, I think is how it's pronounced. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that set, especially when I played on Friday, really connected with people. Yeah, but there's so many. There's another set that just occurred to me where I played a full moon party in the jungle in Costa Rica. Yeah, I think it was in the middle of the night during the full moon. That was really powerful energy in the jungle. There's like, yeah, special energy about the forest and the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit different than clearly like you know, concrete, wood walls or whatever, the
Mm-hmm.
traditional venue versus nature. I tend to like playing in nature a lot. I love to play by a body of water.
Mm.
Like pools, I think there's something powerful about water, as well. And, when I have the opportunity, there's times even if I'm in the pool and I try to get a little meditation in that way because there's something about the water that tends, I feel like, to amplify
Mm-hmm.
things. I mean, water is a conductor of electricity. So why not be a conductor of our thoughts as well, or energies?
Yeah. Lots of studies around water and healing and all of that as well. And just the ability of your body to repair itself while you're just floating in water is enhanced. And it's that's another thing that fascinates me.
That's interesting, 'cause the body can repair itself when it's floating in water.
Yeah, and it's something about just it syncs your body up with the way that it wants to be, and it puts it in the right state to then repair. So it's like an hour of floating in a body of water, and then that healing effect continues over the next like 24 or whatever, however many hours it is. But it kind of helps your body like reset itself in some sort of science way that I don't quite understand because I'm not a scientist.
Gonna put that in my notes.
Yeah, it's really that's also another really fascinating one. So Bite Mark sent this question ahead of time. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
You know, I don't know that I have a favorite poem, but I would say like song lyrics in some ways
Percent.
are are poetry, and I really have been, I guess I'm trying to find the right words. There's a lot of like mysticism and magic in the lyrics that Robert Plant wrote, and a lot of the Led Zeppelin songs. I think that, and people might think, oh, he's thinking about Stairway to Heaven, but actually, no. I think more about a lot of the lyrics that he wrote for Kashmir, and even songs from the album Houses of the Holy. There's a song, I think it's called Rain Song. But yeah, I tend to look at a lot of the lyrics that he wrote as poetry. I feel like there's a lot of other great songwriters, that tend to do that. Now, I do remember, I don't necessarily remember, I wouldn't say it'd be like a favorite poem, but it's kind of random. But when I lived in Philadelphia, I used to walk by the Edgar Allan Poe Museum quite a bit. And I remember, what was his poem? The Crow or something like that?
The Raven,
The Raven, thank you.
Nevermore. Yeah.
The Crow. What a silly thing. But yeah, The Raven, but I don't really remember what it was about. But I do remember having to read a lot of
Mhm.
poetry in junior high and high school, but I was probably more gravitated more towards song lyrics.
Yeah. If you do want to refamiliarize yourself with The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, I highly recommend the Simpsons episode where Bart is the Raven, and they are actually true to the poem. So like it's educational at the same time. I have no qualms about recommending it, but it's hilarious. It's done in a very funny way. But yeah, Robert Plant is just so good. There's a documentary right now that my mom keeps recommending that I watch, and I haven't watched it, and I don't remember the name of it now. Sorry, Mom. I'll have to look that one back up. But there's a documentary, I think it's on Netflix right now, that includes
It,
Led Zeppelin.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I think it's called Becoming Led Zeppelin.
Becoming
You
Led
should watch
Zeppelin.
it.
Yeah. Oh, is it good?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it was
All
really
right.
good.
All right. Good. Not that I need. Again, sorry, Mom. I take your recommendation absolutely, of course, 100%. I was just curious if someone else thought that it was as well. Yeah, that's definitely on my want to watch list, but I haven't watched it yet. So we are coming up on our last couple of questions. If anyone here has any questions they want to make sure to ask, feel free to pop those in the chat. But our last couple here are: what is your favorite life hack?
Favorite life hack? I would say that it took me several years to learn the types of foods that my body responds better to for carrying energy and not crashing, because I have insanely long days. So I would say that that is a life hack that maybe in the last, I don't know, decade that I've learned.
Yeah, just figuring out what your body responds to best. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And then that means that it is time for our magic moment. So if you could take a magic wand and wave it and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
That, I guess, that you can just get over whatever it is that's bothering you instantly. I think it's a lifelong process, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people who maybe don't understand and can't completely empathize, and that might be me as well, as someone who's experienced a certain level of trauma. I feel that a lot of people are like, oh, just get over it, rub some dirt on it, get back in the game. But I don't think it works that way. I think it's a lifelong, work, uh, process, right,
Mm-hmm.
of that healing. And so I think that is a misconception that I think that probably people need to know more about.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. Well, I am going to post your socials one more time. So if folks want to connect with you and find you, they are easily able to do that. While I'm doing that, I'm just going to open it up to you. If there's anything you want to talk about that we didn't get to touch on or anything you want to throw out there, feel free to do so.
I wanted to thank you again for having me. I've enjoyed being able to have this discussion. I enjoy real talk. I think that it's important for your listeners and everybody to be able to have these types of conversations. I like that, at least in the world that we're in now, that it's people feel more comfortable having these types of conversations. It's not maybe as taboo as it used to be. So I think that that's something that I definitely want to mention. But yeah, I don't really necessarily have any more things to talk about. I feel like I've talked enough tonight.
Well, I appreciate all the talking that you have done. Thank you so very much for joining me. Thank you, folks who have been here and been asking questions. I really appreciate you guys showing up and just participating here. Stick around. I will be right back after this, but let me disconnect with Justin and I will be right back. That was my conversation with Justin Paul about music and mental health. I have to say, talking with Justin really made me think differently about something I do every single day. I put on music constantly when I'm cooking, when I'm working, when I'm driving, but I've never really thought about it as intentionally as he does. The idea that certain frequencies are actually doing something physical to our bodies, that 40 hertz can impact our brain function, that's wild. And it makes me want to pay more attention to what I'm listening to and why. One thing that really stuck with me is what Justin said about dancing as a way to release stored trauma and stress. I mentioned in the episode that my son and I dance around in the kitchen and it's nothing fancy or Instagram worthy, but now I'm thinking about how good we both feel afterward, how it shifts the energy in the room. That goes way beyond being just silliness. It's actually doing something for our nervous systems. And Justin's point about healing being a lifelong process, that's huge. We live in a culture that wants quick fixes. Take this pill, do this therapy technique, think more positively, and you'll be fine. But that's not how it works. Mental health is something you have to keep working on. The disagreeable roommate in your head doesn't just pack up and leave one day. You just get better at managing the relationship. Music can be one of your management tools. It's accessible. Most of us have it in our pockets right now. You don't need a prescription. You don't need an appointment. You just need to be intentional about how you use it. If you're dealing with anxiety, maybe try some of those binaural beats or ambient soundscapes. If you're feeling stuck or heavy, put on something with a strong beat and move your body for a few minutes. If you need to cry, find that song that always gets you. Let it do its work. There's no wrong way to use music for your mental health as long as it's helping you. I also appreciated Justin's honesty about his own struggles. Here's someone who performs for thousands of people, who teaches at UCLA, who has built this successful career, and he still deals with mental turbulence. He still has moments where he loses something and spirals a bit. That's very human, and it's a great reminder that success and stability don't make you immune to mental health challenges. We're all just doing our best with the tools we have. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could take a minute to rate and review the show wherever you're listening right now, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a comment. Those comments, those reviews, they really do help other people find the show through the algorithm. It's what feeds it. And honestly, they help me know what's resonating with you. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes. I've got some great conversations coming up for you to tune into. You can find links to connect with Justin in the show notes. Check out his music, his Tropical Stardust Meditations project, and his work at UCLA. And if you're a young artist trying to figure out how to make this work as a career, his Instagram and other platforms have a lot of real talk about the industry. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, for engaging with these conversations about mental health. Connection is important, but engagement is key. So if this episode meant something to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember that even when life feels messy and overwhelming, even when everything else seems to be falling apart, you're not alone in that. We're all just tacos trying to hold it together. And sometimes the right song at the right moment is exactly what we need to make it through. I'll see you next time on Even Tacos Fall Apart.